Hello, this is National Chess Master R. Rats here to continue my video blog series on the match between the Army of Brotherhood and my free video lessons group. I was a little busy the last few days and couldn't get to it, so I'm going to update it today. The match score is changed a bit. It's now 21.5 to 19.5 for the Army, so my group is staging a little bit of a comeback here. Okay, as I mentioned, I want to get these games by No Chewy Candy done. Those were won first. This one is kind of surprising. We'll see as we go through it. And let's bring the analysis board down here. Okay, so all the way back. White moves a lot of pawns in the opening, and black doesn't really uh, challenge this position. In other words, black's not countering in the center. Black's playing more of a hyper-modern style, and here white's just slowly developing his pieces with no clear plan in mind other than to just lay back and await developments and kind of maybe build and swarm his position, overwhelm black. So probably at some point what black needs to do is get some pawns in the center or prepare a break. Uh, I'm not sure if the knight is best posted on c6 or not to do this. Maybe c5 would have been a good move. But again, white's not really challenging. Here, white's already made 5 pawn moves out of 8. Neither knight is developed. And now white's looking at this position saying, hey, I've got a nice center advantage. I'm controlling the center with my pawns. And again, black hasn't really challenged this setup. Now here black does, but white grabs a little more space. Now the knight goes back. And so after 11 moves, you could say white probably has a small advantage here just because he's got a little more space, but um, remains to be seen how they conduct the middle game. They've both got to complete their development. And I think this was the wrong idea. It shuts in the light squared bishop. There's a nice square f5. Um, Black could, well, you have to weaken your king side a little bit with h5, but then you can seize this outpost. Or if anything, there's a potential f6 break uh, on the board for black. But anyway, let's move on. And now this is kind of a peculiar move. Where's this knight going? Uh, it just almost defies logic unless black's kind of saying it's in the way and I need to get b6 and c5 in. But we'll see how it goes. But white just slowly starts increasing his grip on the board, although he doesn't have anything tangible going on. He's just grabbing space. Now we've locked up the center, so now the play is going to be uh, on the 2 wings on the queen side or the 3 wings on the king side. And black continues to redeploy. Now maybe he's eyeballing that f5 square. Now here I think white commits a major mistake. He castles queenside. Uh, since white has so much board room, the safe thing to do is castle kingside. Uh, Now basically you've given black a ray of hope. Black can now start a counterattack against the white king. I don't think white has anything to fear about black attacking his king if he keeps it on the king side, and this is exactly what's going to happen. So we'll consider the king on the this king going to the king side a little later. We'll imagine what would have happened had it been there. Okay, so now black's put all his pieces back on the first rank, and white finally gets his last minor piece developed. And now black starts counterattacking the white advanced lock center. So how does white handle this? He's going to let it go. Now let him take if he wants. Black doesn't take. He sends the bishop into play. And let's see. Now black's eyeballing that f5 square, which white takes away. And here I think white definitely made a mistake. He needs to take that pawn on c5. It opens up the diagonal for the bishop on b2, and it gives white a nice square, d4. He can eventually put a knight there, and that knight's helps trying to help support an eventual f5 break. Although black's going to have some resources. This center of white's is a little bit exposed. But black's giving up a pawn that he didn't have to. And now this would be great if the h-pawn wasn't there. White would have a mate, but the queen's not really doing anything by herself there just yet, unless somehow there's a plan to get a knight into f6, and after, if black takes with the bishop, take back with the f-pawn, run the queen to h6, and drive that knight on f5 away, and administer a mate on or g7. Okay, so black goes ahead and picks up the pawn, and now white starts sending his forces over to the king side, and black holds on to his pawn. And which king looks a little more exposed? I would say the white king looks a little more exposed, actually, simply because the lines are getting ready to be opened up. But black needs some development since he's put his pieces on the back rank. He's got two back in action, but let's go on. Now we're planning the knight f6 move. And I don't think it's really enough yet. White doesn't really have enough to force any kind of a win, as I was explaining, like with the knight f6 check. And even if black has to play knight takes, I don't think white has enough firepower over here to get a mate. Anyway, white trades off black's only attacking piece, the bishop. Black sends the queen over. Now here's a kind of position. Just imagine if the white king were on g1 instead. The king would be safe. Now there's potential of a c4 break, breaking something open here on the queen side where the white king is, and we'll watch it unfold. Black sends a rook over there to help. Here comes the check. It was inevitable. But now the king side is pretty locked up. It's hard to see how white's going to make progress. Now this is kind of odd. The rook had just gone to b8 a couple moves ago. Now it goes to c8. We'll see black has lost a tempo here because he could have had the rooks there in one move quicker. And white's trying anything to get something going on the king side. He's getting ready for h5, but inexplicably he doesn't play it. Instead he plays a little defensive over here but near his king. And here comes c4, ouch, and now c3. Now black's got a couple of monster pass pawns, although and is threatening to play c2 checks. All of a sudden black's winning material just like that. So he gives up the piece, and white stops c2 check. But now, if black's got everything he wants, and white's still hoping somehow that he can pull a mate out of his hat, but then black gets aggressive with his knight, and now we can see the black attack is way much more potent than the white one. Black's got all of his pieces but one pointed towards the enemy king, and white's kind of just sitting there watching it happen, and white's down a piece, and black has a serious threat, which white misses. And here it comes. There goes the queen, and the rest is pretty much history. Black can probably pick his ways to win, and he just keeps the king under check. Black, you need to get your rooks into the game. There we go. And now pretty much it's over. White plays on to checkmate. One more move. And there we have it. So, interesting game. It definitely could have been a white victory had he castled kingside, but he picked the one place to put his king, which was the wrong place, the queen side, right into the only activity black possibly could have mustered up. Okay, let's look at their next game, and we'll scroll down here. That was no chewy candy. Right here. Okay, so let's see. We looked at that one. Now let's take a look at this one. These games ended a few days ago, so once again we can go about and say both players played too quickly. Oops, I got to bring up the analysis board. Okay. So how does White handle this? Okay, we've seen this position 1,000 times. Now this is one of the slower approaches. I don't know all the theory. Normally, Black will play knight f6, but White really doesn't have much to fear against d6. And now the bishop comes back to b6. I do know there's variations, I think, where this happens after knight f6 in d4. Black doesn't take, Black drops the bishop back right away. But analyzing this opening is beyond the scope of this video. What you do when you're playing in a book opening is you look up the lines, play them over, decide if you're comfortable with those, and if you're fortunate enough to find an improvement over what's already been played, good for you. But if in a opening as old as this, the Italian game, the chances of finding an improvement early are slim and none. They've been looking at this before the American Civil War. That was 1860s. Okay, so now White gets this annoying pin, and it's one of the drawbacks of having this bishop over on c5. And just looking back a second, I think Black's in trouble right here after rook e1, because if Black takes a moment to stop this pin, e5 will just blast this position open, and White's got a great game. But after this pin, e5 once again is a threat, and what can Black do about it? He plays queen e8, and he hopes that White doesn't take the knight, but nope, not going to happen. So I think Black has made a major concession in this position. Again, I don't know where it left theory, but let's just back up for a second. And if you look at the point when he played knight f6, maybe this is the position where he just needs to play knight ge7. This will avoid the pin. Black will be ready to castle next move. The knight might be a little misplaced there because it's not controlling as much space in the center, but as it turned out, the position turned into a disaster for Black just positionally because of those doubled pawns. So it goes back to where I say maybe d6 is the wrong move. Again, I don't know the theory. That's for you guys that look at this line. But now you rip the knight off, and White just continues his development. And now this seems kind of odd, blocking the bishop's diagonal. Maybe a better move would be go ahead and pin. Okay, this puts some pressure on d4, so that that Black's threatening to take it, right? And do unto others as others would do unto you. Give White his own set of double pawns. It develops a piece. Seems like a much better move. If White plays d5 to save the pawn, he shuts off the diagonal of his own bishop, and that just drives the knight right into e5 or d4, and it activates this bishop on b6. So queen d7 is a major mistake. And now White comes up with a little tactic threat. Knight takes f6. And look, the little queen's done a little dance. She started on d8. She went to e8 to d7. Now she's back where she started. So clearly Black is playing too quick and not analyzing. Okay, queen d2. Now Black develops his bishop, and White just develops another piece. And white's got this rock solid position with no weaknesses, and black decides to try to liquidate a little bit, and white just collects a pawn. And I think he does it because he can do it. Doesn't And there's nothing wrong with it. White's still just rock solid. Black's down a pawn. Every one of black's pawns is weak. Okay, a7 is isolated. Well, not everyone. d6 is okay, but there's a backward pawn on the open file on c7, and doubled and isolated pawns on the king side. So after 17 moves, black clearly shouldn't have this happen to him. So it goes back to his choice of the opening. Okay, so black spends a tempo to get his king out of danger, although white's not really attacking there yet. I guess maybe black's hoping somehow to try to attack on the g file. Well, got to give him credit for that, for something. At least he's got a plan. So white sends the queen in. Black covers the f-pawn that was loose. White redeploys the bishop, pointed towards the king side. Now, here, this is a mistake. Again, I don't know how long black took on the move, but this is helping activate the white bishop. Make white sacrifice a pawn with an eventual e5. Overprotect the e5 square. Make white sacrifice a pawn if he's going to activate that bishop. Don't just let him activate it on his own, right? Just logical chess. Okay. We don't have to calculate the variations on something like this. A lot of these things should just come just as general instinct. Now, there's always going to be an exception where there's a tactical reason you have to do it. So you do have to look a little bit, but for the most part, d5 is just a bad move. And now the bishop's in the game, and maybe this is black's plan. He wants to pressure the white center, but white just moves forward. He has a little trick here. Black cannot take the pawn on e6 with his pawn because that will unguard the knight on g6. See, the h7 pawn is pinned. It's not protecting the knight unless it's from the queen, because then if the queen took it at some point, the h-pawn would no longer be pinned. So now white sees that juicy f5 square, and there's a twin threat. Knight f5 attacking the queen and threatening a mate. So black covers the g7 square. White brings another piece into play. And now black goes after the bishop, and white decides, oh, you can have it. I don't need it. I'm going for your king. And let's just watch the finish, and we'll come back. We'll see how sound this was. Black stops and collects a pawn, gets some more defense on f6. And white sacrifices his queen. Whoops. Okay, so forces black's move. Black probably didn't see this coming. Now this knight check. Black has one legal move. So this kind of combination is easy to see if you can find the first move. Okay, now rook takes. Once again, black has one legal move. And white just picks up the queen. Could he have had more? Well, we'll come back in a moment. We'll take a look. Double check. And white's so close to having a win here. You could almost go with knight f5 check followed by e7 check. There's so many ways to win this. It's not even funny. White just collects the knight. Now white's a rook ahead. White can pick up the bishop on d4. He doesn't care about it. He wants to save his knight. Why not? It's a good piece. Black saves his bishop. And now black just falls apart, but his game's and allows a mate and one, but his game was over anyway. So a very nice finish by No Chewy Candy. That was a nice queen sacrifice here. I certainly wasn't looking for it when I first played through it, but combinations, with active moves, threats, captures, and checks, they're pretty easy to follow through and analyze because, especially when you're checking, because your opponent's moves are limited. So if you can see this move, The rest is pretty easy. Okay, now uh, you could play knight takes g6 check. That would probably work as well. Knight takes g6 check forces the black king to go to g7, and then you can play knight takes e7, right? But you're on the rook on g8, but black might play rook e8. Let's look at it. And okay, so knight takes. Okay, that forces this move. I'm just looking at it a different way. Now there's no check here. Uh, for the moment, white is ahead a piece, right? Uh, White's got a loose bishop on d3, but we're not worried about that because we've got a rook loose down here. Now let's suppose black saves his rook. Well, white escapes with another check, and let's see, king can come back to g8, and I mean just as one possibility, white can save his bishop. He can take the pawn with check first, then consider knight d6 check. I mean, there's lots of ways to do this. Let's back it up. But you compare and contrast. This one forces him to give up the knight here, and now you get the queen with check. So that's good. And he came back. There's almost a mate here, but not quite. It's so close. Now we'll come back here. I'm on the bishop, threatening. I'm threatening to play rook takes f7 check. Actually, I could do that here, if that matters any. I don't know. Let's see. Takes. I don't quite see a mate, but you can pick up this rook. He gets the bishop. Then you grab this pawn with check. Wow. This may lead to mate. See, there's a mate. Black gets to throw his bishop away. Bingo, checkmate. So maybe that wasn't forced. I just doing this for entertainment value. I don't try to put out a perfect product with perfect analysis, because you see that's the whole thing with online chess. You analyze positions, and if your analysis is correct, you win. If this is what I say that white had a checkmate like this. Was I right? I don't know. You go back and you look again, and you look again, and you look again. You get into your games. This is how you spend 3 hours on a move and find really good plans in your games. So anyway, nice game, No Chewy Candy. Back to the match. Let's see what else. There's been a lot of results that I have to cover. I know that. I'm going to do my best to find them all again on my own. If I miss yours, it's sitting there. I'll try to announce which ones I know I need. If I miss yours, just let me know. Okay, this one looks like it might be new. Wow, look at that. That's a quick mate. How do we miss this one? Oh, my goodness. Okay. Wow, I don't remember doing this. If not, it looks like a short one. We can do it again. Okay, what went wrong here? Okay. Takes c3. Now black has accepted the gambit pawn, but he's got a problem, and here's the problem. Bingo, queen d5. Black's going to lose a piece here. The threat is on f7. How do you cover it? And check, boom, mate. Wow. Okay. How do you keep something like this from happening? Okay. Well, you don't need to pull out a chess opening book to know this move, and you don't need a chess opening book there. Now here's a time you say, how often do I run into the Scotch game? Well, I better look it up. And I don't think bishop e7 is the best move, but it might be. I don't know. But this is the time when black needs to look things up. I think knight f6 is the main line, and Roman Gingy Jashvili has a series on the Scotch Gambit here at chess.com, which is pretty interesting. But let's try to justify the move he does play. Let's see. Let me get in the right position. Bishop e7. Let's try and justify this move and see how black can save himself. Clearly taking the pawn was a mistake. It allowed queen d5. So I see two potential candidate moves for black. One is bishop f6. This is to take some of the heat off e5. And I don't know if this is theory. It looks a little unnatural to put the bishop there. And the other one is knight f6. And the question is black suddenly in a bad line of this? And I don't know. It's going to have to be dealt with in the books. But I would think that any book would say you can't take this pawn because of queen d5. Now, you say, well, I don't have a book. Okay, fine. You don't have a book. Well, in the old days, we all had books. Got this interesting blog series on how the internet has changed chess, and I think one thing that's changed is people don't have chess books anymore. They don't have specialized opening books. Well, they have online databases that are free. Google, free chess line or free online chess database. You're going to find a whole bunch of them. And you can, some of them you have to enter an email to see beyond so many moves, but they're free, and you can use them to your heart's content. And you can look at the most common moves, and if the moves are played most commonly, chances are they're better moves. Now, you'll have to do a little bit of analysis. You could play a popular move that gives you a bad game, but there's no excuse for walking into a book trap and losing this game in 8 moves. Okay, you got to do some work. So queen d5, you have to lose a piece here. The only move is knight h6, and then black loses his knight because he can't retake. But you've saved your king, and this is similar to something I learned when I was a kid. The Hanham variation of the Philidor defense. And I once had a 1700 player play this against me. Okay, let's see. What black needs to do is play c6 first. Because of this. Now there's the threat of mate on, so black doesn't have time for knight f6. If black plays knight h6, bishop takes, wins the piece. So essentially you have to go this way. The other alternative is to go this way, and then your king just gets super exposed. So, like I say, I once beat a player rated 1700 that hadn't seen this. So, what can I say? Good game for white. You were well prepared. Your opponent wasn't. Okay, let's see. We're at 28 minutes. Try to get another game in here. We're going to work from the bottom up, simply because I can find games I haven't covered yet. But that game took a little while. 8 moves. It went a week. We don't know. At least they're sitting online playing back and forth rapid fire chess, but clearly black played too fast. And I don't want to comment on the other game, but I'm going to peek at it. Let's see, what's that look like? Well, like I said, I'm not going to comment, but it looks about 8 moves deep. Okay, let's scroll up. One more game. Let's get this game out of the way. Talfon 1 was the first one to lose a game, and he's on I believe the first video. And I got after him. I sent him a message. I said, you have to slow down. If you look at my forums, I talk about how to play chess slowly, and I sent him the link. How you do it? You look up the things. He goes, okay, I'll slow down and I'll do some work here. But he still lost this one rather quick. Now this is a trap. I'm going to show what it is. This should been seeing this a lot lately. But you don't want to take this pawn, which fortunately he doesn't, because suddenly black gets this great counterattack. And I can't remember if it's in this team match or another team match I saw, but somebody walked right into this. Okay, white says, oh great, I'm winning material. And black says, well, I got a counterattack, and then it goes like this. And suddenly there's a smothered mate. And I was looking at finished games in another team match, and I saw this position. I just groaned. Okay, so let's get to the current position so we can refresh, go back. That's what black's trying to do, okay? Now, the simple move to play is c3, and black can cry, okay? Black's in trouble. What are his choices? Well, he can bring the knight back, and white's 2 tempos ahead, okay? That's one of them. He can put the knight here, and if white wants, he can take this pawn, and white's a pawn ahead, and black doesn't have too much to show for it. Well, you want to try this queen thing again? Let's take a look. Okay, fine. Take it. I'll chase your queen out, and I'll get a nice pawn center, and I'm going to castle queenside. And let's get to the current one more time. So that leaves this choice. Whoops, pick up the wrong piece. Okay. And now white's the one with a mate threat, although black will see it, but white's ahead in development. White's ready to build a pawn center with d4. So obviously white didn't, maybe white knew the book trap, maybe he didn't, but let's go back to the beginning. But knight takes d4 doesn't really challenge black in any way, shape, or form. But white's for choice here. He's got one piece developed, and it's his move. But this is a bad move, okay? You've got one piece developed. Why retreat it? It's not under attack. It's not under pressure. I don't understand this move. What you need to do is simply castle, okay? It's that simple. So bishop e2 is a mistake. Now, you had this bishop on a diagonal attacking the king. Now you've shut it in. If you want to bring it back, it can't get into action. So I don't know what's going on here. Okay, white castles. Now, here's a mistake by black. White doesn't need this square. Black needs development. Just d6, pawn d6. Get ready to develop pieces. Okay, f4. Now, this has ambitions of attacking, but as it turns out, the way white plays this, he just starts losing his pawns. Okay, d6, knight d2. Now, that looks good because it chases the bishop back, but let's watch the follow-up. Okay, white, you need to complete your development. Okay, this bishop on c1 needs to get in the game. Where are you going to put it? Okay, black develops. Now, white's being aggressive with his pawns, but he's not showing us yet how he's going to get his development complete. Now, I see no reason to stop and take this bishop, okay? All this does is, where's this bishop going to move? That's the question. The answer is it isn't, okay? This knight might come in handy at some point. Although it's not going to easily get back to the king side, but we'll forgive it for now. But it's somewhere in this point where he had already lost his other game, and for all it's worth, white does have some chances here, and we'll get to him in a moment. He does develop his bishop. This is good. Wait, it wiped out the moves. Okay. You know, it's hard to believe that white loses this in a few short moves. And this seems logical. Transfer the queen over to the king side to attack. But now black has this little pin, so he saves the knight. And here, white does have some reasonable chances in this game. And I'll show you what the key square is. It's this weakness that black created, h6. Okay. let's see what happened. Then we'll come back. Okay. This is a strange move. Is black or white getting ready to sacrifice on this square? Well, you've got a battery, the queen and bishop on one diagonal, but the queen's in the rear. The queen's your most powerful one. Usually you need a queen in front of a bishop in a battery. Okay, black just guards that. Although even if there's a sacrifice, well, I guess there was a potential sacrifice there, but black covers it. You can't just sit there and hope your opponent doesn't see what you're threatening. And this move has some logic to it too, but there would have been a different way to go about this, and we'll illustrate in a second. See, the one thing that white's been doing wrong is he hasn't completed his development. These rooks still aren't in play, and I even consider this queen out of play. And now white starts giving up pawns. Makes absolute no sense what white's doing in the next couple moves. We'll just see what happens. Now, maybe you're going to lose your e-pawn, but look at this. Black suddenly has this pass pawn rammed down white's throat, blocking the battery. White's down a couple of pawns, right? So look at the score here. Yeah, he's down 2 pawns, and his attack is broken. Let's go back to moves. And this just happened. He was fine when he played bishop f4 at move 15, and he was, seemed to be maybe fine even after that. And all of a sudden, the whole thing has fallen apart. Now the bishop's deactivated. It's hard to see how that bishop comes back in the game. Now white trades off a useful defender, and suddenly black gets his knight in the position, and black sinks the knight there. He's 2 pawns up, and white's all tied up. White resigned here, and I don't blame him. What hope is there? Black has this protected pass pawn wedged in. This knight is killer. How do you get rid of that knight? You probably don't. See, that pawn becomes even more potent. What do you want to do? Put the rook back on e1 where you can't use the bishop? Okay, so let's back up here and see what went wrong, because white did have some chances here if he'd conducted it correctly. Okay, see, the point is, why this pawn is weak is the fact that white can oppose it quicker than if it was on its original square. In other words, tension can be created much quicker, much earlier. Let's leave the bishop here for one move. Okay? Let's leave it here. Let's play this move directly. Now let's suppose black does what I suggested, or what he did anyway. Queen, rook there. Now white goes this way. Now this has a threat. Now it's a threat that black can cover, right? And black probably will cover it. Maybe he will play king h7. But the point is that the queen is left in play. Now, one drawback with having the queen on g3 is that it forestalls the g4 pawn advance. Well, we're going to get to that. Black's counterplay was based in the center, because that's one thing they tell us. What's the best way to meet a wing attack? Play in the center. So black will continue with d5, we would assume. So white, by no means white's winning, but white can start setting up things here. Okay, develop the rook. Now send the rook over to h4. Now maybe there's some sacrifices coming up here. Black has to be very careful. Okay, let's go ahead and win this pawn because we can. And let's attack h7. See, the idea that white's trying to do is now white's trying to sacrifice on h6. let's burn a move and see if this has any merit. Okay, takes. I don't know if this works or not, but this is how you analyze a game. Now, you'd love to play the pawn to f6, but you can't yet. The king is tied up. The king can't escape. Unfortunately, I don't see a way to get another piece in the game just yet. We could put the bishop on b2. Black might play c5 to secure that square, but at least then the rook can come over. I mean, I don't know. This is how you analyze. You spend a couple hours on a position like this because you've got some great attacking chances. The other way to go about this, we'll stick with, let's go current. The other way to go about this, we'll keep the bishop f4 move. And the queen e1, I like that. What if we just let that bishop sit? Let him take it, okay? Because, oh wait, no. See, I want to be able to take back and develop a piece. In other words, if you want to take my bishop, fine. Let's improve the position of my rook. Okay, so let's go back to my queen g3. Now, we don't have a dark squared bishop to attack with, but we've got two pieces in play. White certainly is not losing this position, and white actually has a threat, f6. Okay, burn a move for black, say rook b8, f6 comes in, and you're blasting open the black castle pawn structure. Now, can white do better than this? Possibly, but certainly this is better than just retreating the bishop. We often, I think one of the thinking deficiencies in chess is we see that this bishop is attacked and we say, I want to keep that bishop. Let me move it. Now, I'm going to say one thing. There's nothing wrong with keeping it, okay? But we often slam the door shut and we don't look at anything else. We just say, I have to save that bishop. Therefore, we don't even consider the possibility that this might happen. And, of course, black can defend this position, but, hey, now this bishop suddenly has some life. It was a bad piece before. Now it's got some life. And white can set up an h4, g4, g5 break. Now, could white have done better than that? I don't know. Possibly. That's where you sit down and you look for 2 or 3 hours and you sort through this. I would play this position as white. I would have no problem at all being white here. So backing up with bishop d2 just to save the bishop wasn't necessarily a good idea. White could have done well by letting black take it. Okay, and you get the idea. So this was a pretty promising position for white, and I think he just played too quick. Hopefully he slowed down and hopefully he learned something from this. All right, I'm going to stop this one, and I'll come back with more videos as soon as I can. Thanks for your time. Bye.